Right now, in complete darkness, your cat can see something you never will. But here's what nobody tells you. That same eye that owns the night is, in daylight, actually worse than yours. How does one set of eyes trade away half its ability just to win in the dark? Every night, somewhere in your house, a cat walks confidently through a room you'd need a flashlight to survive. No stumbling, no hesitation, no bumping into furniture, no pausing to let its eyes adjust. It's not guessing its way around. It's genuinely seeing you, seeing the walls, seeing the edge of every piece of furniture. In light so dim your own eyes register it as pure, featureless black. Scientists have measured this precisely. Cats can function in light levels roughly 6 to 8 times dimmer than what a human eye requires just to make out a basic shape. That's not a small edge. That's an entirely different visual world, one layered right on top of the world you live in, and you will never get to experience it because your eyes were never built for it. But here's the part almost nobody talks about, the part that flips this entire story on its head. The very features that make cat eyes so dominant after dark are the exact same features quietly working against them the moment the sun comes up, and once you understand why, you'll never look at a cat's eyes the same way again. Start with the pupil, because this is where the difference begins. Your pupil is round, and it can only open so wide before your iris physically runs out of room to retract further. A cat's pupil is vertical, slit-shaped, and at night it can stretch open into a nearly perfect wide circle, letting in a flood of light your round pupil simply cannot match, no matter how dark the room gets. Behind that pupil sits a lens positioned noticeably closer to the retina than yours is, meaning more of the light that enters the eye actually lands precisely where it needs to, instead of scattering uselessly across the wrong tissue. And behind the retina itself is the structure most people have heard of, but few actually understand at any depth. The tapetum lucidum, a mirror-like layer of iridescent cells that catches light the retina missed on its first pass, and bounces it straight back through for a second attempt. It's the reason a cat's eyes glow when a flashlight or camera flash catches them at night. You're not looking at some strange magic, you're looking at recycled light, quite literally reflected back at you after it already tried once to be useful and failed. But none of that alone explains the real engineering trick, the one that took vision researchers years of careful study to properly quantify and understand. A cat's retina is packed with rod cells, the photoreceptors specifically responsible for detecting motion and shape in dim, low-light conditions, at a density roughly 3 times higher than what's typically found across a human retina. Rods don't need much light to activate. They're built for shadows, for subtle movement, for catching the exact flicker of something small shifting through grass at dusk when almost no light is available at all. And that's exactly what a cat's wild ancestors needed most to survive. Not the ability to read fine print or admire a sunset, but the precise ability to detect the split second a mouse shifted its weight in near total darkness before it slipped away. Here's where the story takes its first real, uncomfortable turn. All of that rod-dominant architecture comes at a direct, measurable cost, and it's a cost most explanations conveniently leave out entirely. Cones, the photoreceptors responsible for color perception and fine visual detail, are comparatively sparse throughout a cat's retina. Where your eyes carry 3 distinct types of cone cells, together capable of distinguishing millions of subtle color variations, a cat's cone population is thinner in number and narrower in range, which means the vivid reds and deep greens you take for granted every single day render, for a cat, as a duller, far more muted, blue and yellow-leaning version of the same world. Your cat has never once seen the true richness of the sunset it's sitting there staring at through the window, and the trade-off runs deeper still, layering one limitation on top of another. Remember that tapetum lucidum, the internal mirror bouncing light back through the retina for a second chance at detection? That same reflective bounce slightly blurs the resulting image, because light scattering back through retinal tissue softens fine edges just enough to matter. In bright daylight, where there's already more than enough light available to work with, that scattering becomes a genuine liability instead of an advantage. Researchers who've specifically studied feline visual acuity have found that a cat's ability to resolve fine detail sits at roughly 1/5 of typical human sharpness. If you personally have 20/20 vision, your cat is functionally seeing the world at something closer to 2100ths. That standard eye chart your optometrist uses would appear as an unreadable, meaningless blur from 6 feet away, to the very same animal that can spot a moth's faint silhouette moving across a pitch-black backyard without a single wasted glance. Now here's the twist that should genuinely change how you think about all of this. Cats aren't simply worse at color and fine detail as some minor unfortunate side effect of good night vision. Multiple studies specifically tracking feline motion perception under bright daylight conditions have found that humans actually detect fast, precise motion more accurately than cats do once the lights are fully on, by a meaningful and repeatable margin. The same rod-heavy retina that makes a cat nearly unstoppable at midnight becomes comparatively sluggish at tracking quick, sharp motion under full sun, because rod cells simply aren't wired to process bright light information the way cone cells are built to. The predator that seems utterly unbeatable prowling your bedroom at 3 in the morning is, in the middle of a sunny afternoon, quietly working with a visibly compromised version of its own eyes. Why does any of this actually matter beyond being a strange bit of trivia about your pet? Because it's a near-perfect living demonstration of a rule that runs quietly through almost the entirety of evolution. There's no such thing as a free biological upgrade. Every advantage arrives paid for by a matching disadvantage somewhere else, whether that trait is obvious or almost completely hidden from view. A cat's wild ancestors were shaped, generation after generation, by millions of years of hunting specifically between dusk and dawn, in the exact narrow window when their small prey was most active and larger daytime predators posed less of an immediate threat. Every generation that happened to see slightly better in near total darkness survived and reproduced slightly more often. Every generation that might have seen slightly better in vivid color or fine daytime detail simply didn't need that advantage badly enough for it to matter to their survival. Natural selection never builds a perfect, all-purpose eye. It builds an eye that is precisely good enough for the specific life an animal actually has to live, and it spends nothing extra beyond that. So the next time your cat's eyes flash a strange gold or green in a photograph, or it silently crosses a completely dark room without a single misstep or hesitation, remember exactly what you're looking at. You're not looking at some universally superior eye that beats yours in every way. You're looking at a finely tuned biological trade, millions of years in the making, built almost entirely around darkness, and quietly paid for every single time the moment the sun comes back up. So the real question worth sitting with isn't just how your cat manages to see the night so remarkably well. It's what your own eyes had to give up generations ago, just so you could see the day this clearly.